This is the Bush Whisperer coming at you from the most beautiful penguin sanctuary, southern tip of Africa, Cape Agulhas, Simonstown, Cape Town. Recognition. What is recognition? Well, recognition is how we form our reality. To understand that what we think we're seeing in this world is mostly what we recognize. For the structure of life is a pattern that we form around ourselves. And we recognize everything that we see as part of this great cosmic pattern. So when you walk into a room, much of what you think you're seeing is your imagination filling in the gaps of recognition. Consider that for a moment when you think about reality. And be aware of the fact that you're living between 2 and 4 seconds in the past. And that the absolute nature of this trance of reality that we're experiencing is fundamentally a mental construct in our minds. I did a video about this, about how the matrix of form works. But now we're going to contemplate recognition and how important recognition really is. And just exactly how we can develop these abilities to recognize. Recognizing faces, recognizing voices. A penguin baby can hear the penguin mommy's voice in a crowd of penguins. The same with seals. They have been innately tuned to recognize the exact frequencies of tone that is the mother's call. And it's not something that we are taught or that animals are taught. So recognition begins with tone and sound and frequency. And to understand how this works is to understand how the nature of being is manifesting this world around us, through us. Wow, the light is bright here. And to understand how this recognition is structuring the very nature of our consciousness field is to understand the nature of consciousness itself. Sorry, my son is pushing against me and he's going to disturb my camera. I have to keep moving. He's got his little hand in my hand and I have to hold his hand tight. So the recognition is the fundamental structure of all things. Tonality and vibration. The reason for recognition is that there are essentially only 3 states of being. There are essentially only 3 things. And these 3 things permute themselves into 7 things. And the 7 things permute themselves into 12 things. And the 12 things permute themselves, and those permute themselves, and those permute themselves. And it's an endless field of differentiation based on permutation of the original 3 principles. And the original 3 principles are permutations of 1. For 1 can be permutated or permuted in 3 forms. And it's got to do with the nature of consciousness, emotion, experience of awareness, and the way the awareness field builds through our consciousness. I have done videos that touch this, and I will delve more deeply into this in future videos. Though the recognition is the field. Now we've spoken about memory. I did an extensive video on memory. Memory is the basis through which recognition operates. Recognition you can think of as a very fundamental part of the memory field. And so the word recognize. Okay, so cogs. We're talking about chakra. We're talking about cogs that are turning, and that there are 3 fundamental cogs that are turning, and these 3 fundamental turning cogs become the instrument of cognition through which we can cognitively experience reality. And the cognition is essentially an emotional field that is structured by thinking, the structure of the thought. The vessels of thought contain the essence of emotion. And so the emotional intelligence is able to structure through recognition. And the logical, rational mind is able to label the recognized impulses and be able to turn them into perceivable events on the mental sphere. I'm not going to walk anywhere now, Joshua. Don't drag me around. So, sorry, that was my boy. He's trying to get my attention to drag my hand, and I'm struggling to make a video while he's dragging me along. He needs to sit down for a moment. So recognition is the key to understanding the correlations in the universal field of consciousness. All things are emanations of these 3 principles, and so all things hold the essential key of these three principles in their toe and are reflections of these. And so there's recognition always operating through our consciousness field. And the recognition is essentially the second mighty principle of the Hermetics coming into being. That all things are related to all other things. That all things are entangled with all other things, fundamentally and on an energetic level. And that this entangling process gives us meaning. And that all meanings are somehow related to other meanings. Objects related to other objects. Objects related to thoughts. Thoughts related to emotions. And so this field of correspondence is an expanding spiral of being that is essentially bound by the power of recognition. So the reason I'm making this video about recognition, and do like and share this video if you think it's useful, if you think others will enjoy it, if you're enjoying it. It helps the algorithms. It helps what I'm doing have a point. The fundamental sphere of recognition can be developed. It can be trained, it can be harnessed. There's a little game called Kim's game. Read up on it. It's a way to increase one's natural recognition, how to build the memory field, which is recognition, the aspect of the memory field. Having a number of items on a tray which are covered, random items arranged by someone else. And you look at it for a short period of time, and then you close your eyes and you write down what it is you were seeing on the tray. How many objects did you recognize in a short period of time? And how imprinted was the recognition in your consciousness field through the memory aspect which drives recognition? And so this Kim's game is a children's game, but it was used by the Western occult for many years. The shaman understands how important is recognition. Recognition is how the shaman reads nature. Reading the book of nature openly gives one an instinct to the omens. For the omens are speaking to us through our sphere of recognition directly. What we recognize as changes in the field around us, changes in the reality, unusual events, we recognize something profound in these structures that we're observing. And so it gives us an insight into what's going on. This way the shaman is able to make wonderful predictions and gain insights into mystical things that are happening on the inner planes that relate to time and space. So recognition is fundamental. It's fundamental to all explorations of consciousness, all explorations of the self. And so to develop this sphere of recognition is to develop the memory that it takes in order to realize the second principle of the Hermetics. And thus we start to become attuned with the quantum entangling. And the quantum entangling is always happening. Our thoughts are quantum entangled with the objects around us, as are our feelings, the glue of this quantum entanglement. To understand how fundamental is recognition is to understand how fundamental is the experience of realizing the connections between things, because it drives the higher aspects of consciousness and of mind to form an experience of reality which is cohesive. And thus the telepathy of love is being reflected through all of these connections of all things, people, beings. And we're able to gain the insights that comes with this powerful sphere of recognition. For the sphere of recognition is the sphere of being. The sphere of being is revealing to us what we're seeing, truly seeing. For what we see isn't what it appears to be. Life is so much more intricate than what it appears to be. The nature of time is being expressed through the sphere of recognition. So to recognize the idiosyncrasies of life is to recognize the idiosyncrasies of self. And this recognition is akin to the concept of self-knowledge. Because when we know ourselves, we recognize ourselves. So practicing recognition in all its forms will activate the principle of recognition within oneself, and one will begin to recognize when one is being oneself. One will begin to recognize the true impulses that come from the deeper planes. This is a powerful shamanic medicine, recognition. And shaman practice seeking recognition. They seek nature to see what they recognize as patterns, what they recognize as the norms, and anything that they recognize as being outside of the pattern becomes of relevance and importance to contemplate. And the contemplation of this leads us to have a personal experience of the omen. This is the Bush Whisperer, sharing a few words about recognition. I hope you recognize the value of this. Do hit the subscribe button if you like the value. If you think it's worth following, there are daily uploads. Have a totally gorgeous day, and don't forget, pay attention and recognize what's going on in your world. You will recognize yourself. Om Shanti.